back once again, and it is another edition of the Astro Weather. Oh, sorry. My program was glitching. The matrix was glitching. Oh, look who's here. Look who's here. Oh, there she is, the Astro Weather girl. Yes, the Astro Weather girl. Miss Peaches. Miss Peaches Deluxe. Greetings, everyone. One and all. How are you? Let me roll up my sleeves here as we get into action. There you go. All right, man. Little harder to get up these days. Rise in the morning, as they say. What happens when your basketball team plays at 9 p.m. at night on the West Coast, or 9 p.m. Here Central, 7 p.m. West Coast? You wind up staying up till about 11:30, watching them. Go Warriors! Go Warriors! All right, let's see, who do we have? DJ MC in the house. Brother Mike, Kabuki Theater. Brother Bo, Deborah Wheeler, Sister Deborah. Misbehaving too. What's happening? My man Steve, Thor at the door. Hear him roar. Neil Smith checking in from Wisconsin. Kelly B, Christina Jurzik. What's happening, CJ? Nora Rashid, the Queen of Speed. Well, Moira, good morning. Apparently, busloads of illegals are being bussed in and led in at polling sites. Yes. It's happening. The rush is on. The stampede. The reason why they have all been brought here, or at least one of the reasons, now that it's time for them to pay back a little of that good old illegal money. Let's see. How does it feel knowing you're just garbage? Yeah, not great. Not great. Ryan, my man. What's going on, brother? Good to see you. I would rather be a deplorable. Amen. Amen. Let's see who else we have here. Terry Garr passed away. Terry Garr was one of these women who was very attractive to men. Men really liked Terry Garr for a number of reasons. Number one, she was pretty, but she wasn't like, overly pretty. You know what I mean? She's pretty, but not overly pretty. She was funny. She seemed like, there's a term for somebody like Terry Garr, and it's called a down girl, meaning that, yeah, I'd be down for that. I'd be down for that. I'd be down for that, right? Terry Garr's got that down girl vibe, like, she'd be good. Yeah, let's go to a game, or yeah, let's do yeah. Like, I'm sure she has her limits, like anybody does. The other thing about Terry Garr is that she had the looks that did not threaten women, and some women are like that. They're attractive and pretty, but for whatever reason, women aren't threatened by them. Terry Garr had that. She had that package. She had that look. Warlanda. I raise my cup to Warlanda. Yeah, I'm on a double banger today. Coffee. Barbara Boots going for a dental appointment. Queen Lisa's in the house from Florida. Janine PMS. What's going on, Janine? Dave Sullivan, big Dave Sullivan. Laura E's here. Fink and Fleas. Anyone who is that worried about retribution coming to them already knows that they've been very, very bad. What comes around goes around. What comes around goes around. I'll tell you why. Dig. Tom's here. Hi, Tom. The new from McKinney. Waiting on the rain. Yeah, it's been pretty hot here. The green-eyed crow's in the house. The old green-eyed crow. Brandy Herrera. Vegas, baby. Joan S., the lovely and talented one, saving Austin one tooth at a time. Rat, I love that song. Comes around, goes around. Milton Berle. Night Slight. Greetings, Night Slight. Yes, join locals. Become a member. Become a supporting member. That'd be very, very helpful. To be a supporting member. Yes, indeed. And tomorrow night after 8 p.m., we will be going into the Devil's Advocate over on Locals. If you haven't seen it, you may want to catch up with it. Sigurd's around here. Hello from inside a rather overheated recording studio. Sigurd, I just finished a 1 hour documentary on Lotte Hoople. I didn't do it. It's a little over an hour, but it's on YouTube. And it's a nice little documentary, one of my favorite bands. Jeff Rosen, what's going on, JR? Harry Bowie, Kabuki Theater in the house. Hey. Oh boy, there's Bo. I'm still getting my head together here. So please bear with me. Rainbows and butterflies. Claire's here. Enjoying a late fall 3-day warm up with sun stick season in Vermont. No leaves, no snow. I love it because you can actually see the contours and so much more usually hidden in the forest. Oh, that's pretty cool. Yes, you can buy me a coffee right there. Your coffees are appreciated. They help with the production of things. Darlene, Road Trip 1981. Maria d'Ange. Ezra Pound, I must confess to a long-standing Hilda Doolittle fetish. Yeah, we're gonna get into Ezra Pound today, who's one of my favorite historical and literary figures. Ezra Pound was. They don't make people like Ezra Pound anymore. They just don't. When you look at his work, his body of work, the species has fallen. I mean, these are, even though they didn't have technology, these were peak people with their intelligence and their understanding of classics and just the absolute what would be the word I would use? Hungry. Their hungry intellect and being influenced by everything from Chinese forest poetry to French. Well, I guess French symbolism wasn't quite around just yet, but Pound was just an intellectual monster, and one of the most important people in the 20th century when it comes to literature. Like, there's no real wasteland of T.S. Eliot without Ezra Pound and his deft editing, and Pound championed people like James Joyce and D.H. Lawrence, and he's a really interesting character. We're going to get into him today. He's the star of the day. Sigurd let the cat out of the bag, and which is fine. And I'll be on with Giuseppe, Dave Scorpio, and Russ today, and we'll be talking more about Ezra Pound on Ezra Pound Day. Finca Feliz, did you see where Panama asked UN to eliminate the blockade of Cuba? Oh, isn't that nice of them? Fallon Blue, what's happening? Catherine Faulkner. Hi, Catherine. Amy Gill, Lynette Jardine. And don't forget to hit the like and subscribe. Very important. Very important. Okay. Now to satisfy my occasional critics. We're getting into the weather here. Here we go. All right. It's still looking rather complex, isn't it? Yes. This splash chart is still all over the place. What has changed since yesterday? The moon. The moon has changed. So the moon's at 15 degrees today, Libra. So it's right in the center of Libra, which makes it right sort of I get this is an interesting, well, I would say zero Libra is the center of the zodiac, meaning that it is the degree that separates the top of the chart from the bottom of the chart. But if we were to look at Libra itself, the moon is right in the center of Libra. So it's not quite in the center. It's actually leaning towards the top of the chart. But it's at 15 degrees. And can't we all get along? That's really the moniker here. The moon is coming in and trining Jupiter. And that's a nice trine. It's a nice trine. What me worry? What me worry? We're just a little over a week away from absolute chaos. And what me worry? Yeah, I mean, I do think that you have to, of course, take care of business, and you have to make sure that if the shit hits the fan, that you have a cleanup crew to take the shit off the wall or whatever, right? So, but today is one of those days where, you know, don't sweat the small stuff. Yeah, there's a lot going on here. There's the eternal struggle with the sun and Mars, right? The eternal struggle is going on there. But don't sweat the small stuff. Set the tone today. This is the theme of the day. You set the tone. You set the tone. I remember when I was a kid, it was like, am I going to have a good day or a bad day? In my life, when I'm like a kid, like 11 years old, 12 years old, and life was sort of like a roulette wheel. And what I could have known and should have known is that we have the ability to set the tone. And today's one of those days. We've got the moon or night, depending on where you are. The moon is at a very nice angle with Venus. Ooh la la, the moon and Venus. Nothing will come between us. And it was, hey, I'm going to get my pound on. So we have the moon sextile with Venus and Pallas, which is a little prophetic here in the sign of Sagittarius. This is the emotional center that we're coming from today. And then it trines Jupiter. And that trine will be continuing to evolve throughout the rest of the day, and as will the sextile with Venus and Pallas. Don't sweat the small stuff. You set the tone. So your relationships, your emotional response, you're an emotional tone setter. Yeah, I mean, if you need to, you got to roll up your sleeves. Yeah, roll up your sleeves and take care of business. But that's not the place to start. Even, and I know it just has to do with the fact that, I'm using San Antonio as an anchor, but the moon is also conjunct the part of fortune. So take a deep breath. Imagine that everyone today is a winner. Everyone's a winner. You can walk up to somebody and say, you know what? You are a winner. You are such a winner. What do you mean? You're just a winner. Look at you. Look at you. If you're in a sales job, you say, you know what? You're going to have a record day today. You're going to have a record Wednesday. An absolutely record Wednesday. Really? How do you know that? Because I know you and you're a winner. That's why. I'm being somewhat facetious, but there's some truth to that. And what's interesting is the relationship with Chiron, because the moon is opposing Chiron. And here's how I'm going to address this. Having some emotional distance into other people's wounds. Like, you can see them, but you don't have to enter into them. And Venus here is trine Chiron. And we're all a little wounded, right? We're all a little shell shocked. We all have a little trauma, not a lot. Sometimes a lot of people have worked on their trauma. Not everybody's a walking basket case. But today's one of those days. Fluff them up, people. Fluff them up. Set the tone. Bring balance into the environment that you're in. I think it's a fantastic way to address this nice little Moon Jupiter trine. It's great. It's like it's expansive. By the way, I've really liked Jupiter and Gemini. I've been enjoying Jupiter and Gemini. It does come in and trine my Libra planets, which has been nice, I have to say. What else we have here? Venus is squaring Saturn, and again, stand by your man or woman. That's the Venus Saturn square. I'm not gonna let you go. I'm not gonna abandon you. I believe in you. You're a winner. You are a winner. Let's roll up our sleeves and get this thing done. What's interesting about this Venus Saturn square, I think, from another perspective, and we'll take it up a few notches. We're gonna go mundane astrology. Floor 11, please. The Venus Saturn square is ideological, and it's the battle over emotions and this idea of religion. Of all the signs, to me, Sagittarius is the most fascist. And I mean that in a loving way. Stalin was a Sagittarius. We've gone through this. I've gone through all the world leaders who have been Sagittarians, and let's just say they carried a big stick. So what have we been seeing with Harris and the Harris crew? Everything has been a reenactment of Trump. I haven't programmed 15 minutes, so I'm gonna have to leave the show early today so I can do that. But we're going to look at all of the various examples of voter fraud and theft. Kind of an update on erection dysfunction from Friday, which still is on YouTube. I managed to skirt past the pesky algorithms of the AI bots. I knew I could do it. I knew I had faith. I had faith in the system. But last night was Kamala Harris's last political speech before the election, which is pretty odd, don't you think? Like, there are days coming. Like, so what do they know? Usually the last speech is set for either Friday or Saturday, sometime in the weekend. And by the way, I fucking hate early voting. I hate it. I hate early voting. I hate mail-in ballots. I'm a purist. The Virgo in me absolutely is not down with all this shit. Show up, you punch a card, and then, or you mark it with the number 2 pencil, and then that's it. That's it. That's the way it should be done. But I am not the God of America. But you can see this with sort of the rhetoric. Like, the rhetoric is out of control. And I guess they were at the Ellipses last night. We'll get into more of this on 15. But they were at the Ellipses last night in Washington, where Trump had the speech for January 6th. And apparently 150 years ago, there was a KKK rally there. Like, what fucking universe are these people living in? I get it. It's the 4th turning, so we're resurrecting the goats. Goats, yeah, that too. We're resurrecting the ghosts of the of slavery, the post-slavery world. Okay, great. But this is what they've been doing. They've been doing their best to reanimate Trump as Hitler, or Trump as the Grand Dragon Wizard. And if you've paid attention, you can tell that Harris's campaign strategy has changed drastically over the past roughly 3 weeks. It went from a love fest to a fuck you fest to Trump. And they made a clear pivot on their strategy. By the way, Tim Walz still nowhere to be found. They put his ass in a bunker. And to me, this is the Venus-Saturn. This is part of the Venus-Saturn square. Absolutely. It's an ideological clash in casting Trump and the so-called right as a if you what was that movie? I always forget the name of that movie. Oh, hold on a second. It's early. My brain's still kicking in. The Watchmen. The Watchmen with the TV series The Watchmen, which was a Amazon version of the movie The Watchmen, based on the comic book The Watchmen, the illustrated novel by Alan Moore. And in The Watchmen, in Amazon, there is a leader of a group of angry, disaffected white men who are kind of dressed like this character Rorschach. And the leader happens to be played by Don Johnson, who I think has a similar role, if I'm not mistaken, in Django. It's not the same, but essentially what the TV series The Watchmen was portraying was that there was a very powerful white male figure who was leading, or in the series, it leads like a veritable lynch mob of angry white men. And it's basically what they've done is they've just taken pages out of this Watchmen TV series. And Donald Trump is the Don Johnson character. It's funny that they both have the same name, Don, as part of their name. But that's what we're getting with this Venus-Saturn square. We're getting a lot of this fascist rhetoric that is being cast, like Trump at Madison Square Garden, where the American Nazi Party had a rally at one point in time. And, you know, if Trump's not doing it, we'll have a rally and we'll reenact the Klan rally from 150 years ago at the Ellipses. They're doing everything to summon the ghosts of the past. And it's, for people that are paying attention, it's just really annoying and completely trite. You know, it's the lowest form of manipulation possible. And then you ask yourself, well, how does it work? How do these people fall for it? It's because many people are desperate, scared, and gullible. 3 terms right there. Three states, 3 conditions. And Venus, if we track Venus out here a little bit until next Tuesday, it'll still be in square with Saturn. So this ideological clash is still going to be happening. And of course, on election night, we're gonna have that moon in Sagittarius, and that moon is going to be conjuncting Trump's eclipse moon today. Watch out, man! Watch out for people who are going to be talking shit out of turn. Be prepared for that. We got a Mercury-Uranus opposition right here. And somebody just it's sort of like the tongue of a reptile uncoiled. A frog, one of those frog tongues, right? That it's a fly, you know, a whip. That's the Mercury-Uranus opposition. Things are set. It's like, whoa, where did that come from? So keep an eye on that as well. In your world, the random ricochet of language and communication, but also, again, out there, mundane astrology, floor 11. People just saying things, and there's a lot of truth revealed here with these, the blips. There's a lot of truth revealed. So pay attention. So the Freudian slip is a thing. Just because Freud was a very manipulative man doesn't mean that he wasn't onto something with this whole idea of the Freudian slip. It's when the subconscious has a language that it has to get out, and it will say certain things like, oh, I didn't really mean that. It was taken out of context. This is the Mercury-Uranus opposition. Pay attention. Pay attention. Somebody asked me, but what do we do with this Mercury-Neptune trine? And what do we do with this Mercury-Mars trine? I think, again, if we go back to where the moon in Libra is, and this potential for being expansive and setting the tone, I think that the Mercury-Mars trine can be very encouraging in a lot of ways as well. It's like, okay, well, if you want to plan for action, here you go. For your own life, draw up a map. Draw up a map and put it into action. Put it into gear. And the Mercury-Neptune trine is interesting because we're into the realm of dream and vision. And it's almost like a luxury because we're so focused. It's like our world is so weird because everything has been funneled into this one fucking moment in time, right? November 5th, because we all know on some level that whatever happens, nobody's going to be happy. No one's going to be happy. And the reverberations and the ramifications of the outcome of November 11th are going to be far-reaching and wide. But that doesn't mean that you can't dream. Like all these conditions of the world have really put blinders on us. It's almost like you have to be in this lane right now. And if you're not in this lane, then don't you pay attention to the news? Aren't you going to vote? Who are you going to vote for? I got a call on Monday from a dear friend, good friend of the show. She was in a state of panic. And she was in a state of panic because she did not want to vote for Harris. Clearly, she understands the danger of Harris. And she also is looking at what's going on in Israel and Gaza and sort of the tacit, kind of agreement that is happening not only with this administration, but with people like Jared Kushner, who sits at the right hand of Donald Trump. And Donald Trump has not even addressed they're literally shooting kids in the head in Gaza. Nobody's talking about it. Nobody's really addressing it. And clearly Trump's not addressing it. Kamala Harris isn't addressing it. So she's, and rightly so, because there's so much tension and so much involved. He said, well, Trump is the lesser of two evils. And I think probably most of us would agree upon that. But what kind of world do we live in where, nobody's talking about this as an issue? Not even the so-called defenders of the left and the anti-Zionists. They're not even really talking about it. Harris is acting as if it doesn't exist. So all these things are happening, right? All this tension, all this pressure, funneling into this one moment in time, and yet the astrology says, "What's your dream?" That's the Mercury-Neptune trine. What is your dream? To be able to live and define one's life outside of the bounds of what's happening politically, and even to a slightly lesser extent economically, How do you move beyond that? What if you had the ability to surf your own reality, not in a black pill kind of way, right? Not in a black pill kind of way, but in a way where all of a sudden your life is operating at a different level, and it is not defined by these polarized pieces that we find ourselves stuck in the middle with. And what would happen if a small percentage of us started to live that way? Now I'm kind of, entering into, well, you create your own reality territory. If you look around, maybe that's not such a bad thing. So pay attention to that. Ask yourself the question, what kind of reality do I want? What kind of world do I want to live in? Dare to ask the big question. Dare to ask the question, who am I when I am not defined by these polarized principles and polarized operation? I think it's a really important question. Yes, we live in the world, and yes, we have systems, and yes, the systems have to some degree, support our reality. It's part of this Pisces Vesica. And all you generators out there, and there are a lot of you, you respond to the situation. If you don't like the world that you're living in, create a new one. And I'm not even talking about like going off the grid and doing this and doing that. I mean, you can do that if you want. But we live in a vast multiverse. So maybe redefining reality and not being caught in such a narrow tunnel of our experience. On the other hand, that narrow tunnel of our experience does feel a lot like a birth canal moment as well. It's really weird being in this realm right now because both of these things can be equally true. Isn't life grand? Have a good chuckle, have a good laugh, set the tone. You can be caught up in a lot of this tension. Sun square Pluto, everything seems dire, everything seems like it's all or nothing. And there is some of that. Ain't gonna deny that. But what if you redefine reality based on being able to, you know, unhook from the Velcro of it to some degree? You just can't. When I was a kid, my father used to tell me he was way ahead of the curve. Way ahead of the curve. He would tell me, well, you create your own reality. I must have been about, I don't know, 11, 12. So we're in the early 70s here. You create your own reality. Everything is based on the thoughts in your head. Everything. And when I was young, I fought him tooth and nail on that. Like, you can't be serious. When you're going through puberty and everything is awkward and you're dealing with, a bunch of jackals, it's really hard to say, oh, I created this, right? But he was right. There was some truth to what he was saying. And now looking back on it, he was spot on. So again, it gets back to this idea of you're in the world, but not of it. And how do you define it today? Well, you define it today by setting the tone. You're a winner, baby. You're smart enough. You're attractive enough. All those kind of Jack Handyisms. But I do mean it. I'm poking a little bit of fun at it because we have to take the piss out of it, don't we? But it's true. Dare to be the person that creates your own reality. It co-creates it with others. creating their own reality. Let's talk a little True Hemp Science. Let's talk a little Ezra Pound. True Hemp Science, your one-stop shop for all things CBD. I may indulge in a little CBD myself. I think today I'm going to have some Synapta. I need some Synapta today. We're going the Synapta route. I need those neurons to fire. Synapta G22, if you're keeping score at home. One of my favorite elixirs from Chris. And all you got to do if you want to get a little goodie bag with, Chris has these nice little vials. This one is dose right here. You get some doses in there. And of course, I have held up the little Starlight package. You want that. So you get a little goodie bag with some of those things in there when you purchase $100 or more. 15MINS is the code you need to get that goodie bag. $150 more gets you free shipping. Always a 30-day money-back guarantee. TrueHempScience.com, your one-stop shop for all your CBD needs to take care of your body, mind, and spirit. All right, let's talk about my man, Ezra Pound. Look at him. This was what he looked like cavorting through the streets of Paris. Ezra Pound was a big man. He was well over 6 feet, and he was burly. That was the description of Ezra Pound. And he had that, if you could colorize that photo, that hair would be red. Looking something like a cross between Errol Flynn and Louis XV. He cut a very romantic figure, to say the least. The thing that's interesting about Pound is not only his chart, but his background. And he comes from money. He's born in Haley, Idaho. So the journey from Idaho to Paris is a fascinating one, with stops in between at the Ivy League. And Pound he had the size of an athlete, but he preferred sports like fencing. I mean, who like he looks a lot like Errol Flynn there. I mean, who wouldn't? If you look like that, I'd fucking fence too. So, back in the day, they had things like rudimentary football and then boxing. I played a little baseball back then as well, turn of the century. But you can see, like, even the sort of the redheaded visage, Aries on the ascendant. Look at this chart. Everything is perfect. 0 Aries, 0 Cancer, 0 Libra, 0 Capricorn. It is the most most aligned chart I've ever seen. 0, 0, 0, 0. And aligns perfectly with the equinoxes and the solstices, right? But he came from money, and what's interesting is that Pound becomes an expert on currency and money lending. And his grandfather, who made a lot of money in the lumber business, started his own script. So this idea of money runs in the Pound family. And it's kind of interesting that his last name is named after a form of British currency. Now, if you look at his Venus, it's a very important placement, because what does he do? He winds up really establishing a beachhead in Europe, mostly Paris, but then eventually he winds up moving to Italy and places like Venice and ultimately Rapallo, where he would spend quite a number of years there, married, and this is where he would broadcast on Mussolini's radio and talk about money and talk about the money lenders. And he's such an interesting character because he understands this completely. And we're going to be playing some of Pound's very old recordings. These are radio recordings of Ezra Pound. We'll be playing them over on the G-Man show today. The other thing about Pound is he's a bit of a ne'er-do-well, and he always marries for money. So the women that he becomes involved with, whether it's as a mistress, because Pound had them, or his actual wives, which he had, Pound always had money, and he always had people working in his home, right? He loved food, and so he would hire, local chefs and things like that. So Pound lived the life of somebody who was elite, right? You can see this in his chart with the moon in Leo and Mars in Leo. He's got that Mars-Venus trine. He kind of lived the life of a king. That, he always, Pound never married down. Let's put it that way. And when it comes to money, he's got some very interesting things going on here. He's got Mercury and Pallas and Juno, and to some degree, Ceres, and they're all in the 8th house. And when they're in the 8th house, what are we dealing with? We're dealing with other people's money and credit, right? So the 2nd house is hard assets. The 8th house is other people's money. And this is where Pound ultimately winds up putting a lot of time, effort, and energy into. Now, at a certain point, he flew from Italy to Washington to meet with Roosevelt about the state of money lending in the central banks. Ironically, the person who's sent to meet him is Henry Wallace, who's as kooky as Pound. And I'm not saying Pound is kooky in the sense that he was wrong. Pound was right. Also very interesting that we have this saying, a pound of flesh, which comes from the Merchant of Venice, a place where Pound would actually live. So he's this very interesting character. And he's also somebody who's very much connected to this idea of money and labor, right? He's not into credit at all. And he's got this true node Jupiter conjunction in the 6th house, which is all about value, right? He talks about gold-backed currencies, and he is not a social credit person at all. And not only that, but this true node and Jupiter conjunction in his chart also sets him up to be somebody who is very important in terms of serving the literary art form. And as I mentioned before, Virgo makes great editors. He turned The Wasteland by T.S. Eliot, he turned it into a readable epic poem versus this long and rambling kind of, mythical tale of post World War I woe. I mean, it's in there, but Pound finds the economy of language, and he's a big champion of the literary world, and he's there with his editing skills to promote that. This is an incredible period. The 1920s in Paris are a remarkable period. Pound is part of this this lost generation, right, with Pluto and Gemini. They're lost in the sense that they're disaffected, and they decide that they want to go all find themselves. And at that time, Europe is much more established as a kind of cultural font, right? They've had decades to develop their kind of aesthetic and cultural styles and systems. While America at that time is still very young. It's a very young country, and it doesn't really have the same kinds of relationship to literature and mythology and the classics that Europe does. And that's why it's very attractive for the literary and intellectual types. And he wasn't the only one. Joseph Campbell was going to Europe around that time. So it was a hotbed. Ernest Hemingway was there. I mean, all these people were there in Paris. And Venus in the 9th house in Pound's chart You know, that's what draws him there. The other thing too that's interesting is Saturn in the fourth house. And if you look at his grandfather, and his grandfather being kind of a lumber magnate who understands the power of money and wants to create his own script, which is create his own money. This is the influence of the father and or the grandfather in the home. This is all emotional and influence and value, right? Right there. Fourth house. Now, Pound would eventually be arrested once the Americans won World War II, theoretically for the Soviets, and he would return to the United States, and he would spend the better part of 2 decades in St. Elizabeth's, which is a mental institution. So instead of being active and being in the world and, you know, being an editor or being critical in some ways of the system and other literary works, Pound winds up spending a huge amount of time of his life in the 12th house, where he gets the thing with Pound. He was very like he got 3 squares a day. He got 3 squares a day. St. Elizabeth's is not a prison. They had a library. Apparently, he used to smoke dope there. People would come and visit him all the time. And eventually, under Eisenhower, with the influence of people like Robert Frost and other poets, they were able to spring him and get out. And then, you know, his life, though, winds up being a very lonely one. And he, you know, doesn't deserve, in some ways, the fate that life has handed him. But this is what happens when you spend. This is what happens when you spend most of your prime. Like, he was older. It wasn't like it was prime Pound. But spending 12 years with your South Node in Pisces in the 12th house is not ideal. Not ideal. He's got Chiron in the 3rd house in Gemini. So that's also, you know, radio broadcasting, the 3rd house. And he's going to have something, well, quite different to say. Wouldn't he? Cutting against the grain. Neptune and Pluto in the 2nd. Those, again, that's related to money, hard value. Right. And Pound is very clear that, you know, that he is not a social predator. And it's tied in, you know, even though Pluto's in Gemini, it's coming in and training his Jupiter. I think he'd be very hard to be in a relationship with. Uranus in the 7th house, it's either Pound's way or the highway. And you'd have to give him a lot of latitude. Why don't we play a little Ezra Pound here? And then we're going to get out of here. Let's play a little Ezra Pound. There's a poem here that is not very long. I played it last night. It's about 2 minutes. Let's see what we have here. Let's see. Right here. Okay, so these are images of Pound. And he has this epic work called the Cantos. And they're very dense. And you really have to kind of understand a little bit about his own life and his personal mythology. So here we go. Here's Ezra Pound. And I'm just going to play this. And you may want to turn your volume up a little bit. But his cadence and his delivery are tremendous. And it just speaks of another time in this the kind of classical approach to language and oratory. Here we go.
What thou lovest well remains, the rest is dross. What thou lovest well shall not be reft from thee. What thou lovest well is thy true heritage, whose world, or mine, or theirs, or is it of none? First came the scene, then thus the palpable Elysium, though it were in the halls of hell. What thou lovest well is thy true heritage. What thou lovest well shall not be reft from thee. The ant's a centaur in his dragon world. Pull down thy vanity. It is not man made courage or made order or made grace. Pull down thy vanity, I say pull down. Learn of the green world what shall be thy place in scaled invention or true artistry. Pull down thy vanity, Pacan, pull down the green cask has outdone your arrogance. Master thyself, then others shall thee bear. Pull down thy vanity. Thou art a beaten dog beneath the hail, a swollen magpie in a fitful sun, half black, half white, nor knowst thou wing from tail. Pull down thy vanity. How mean thy hates fostered in falsity. Pull down thy vanity. Wraith to destroy, niggard in charity. Pull down thy vanity, I say pull down. But to have done instead of not doing, this is not vanity. To have with decency knocked that a blunt should open, to have gathered from the air of live tradition, or from a fine old eye the unconquered flame, this is not vanity. Here error is all not done, all in the diffidence that faltered.
Ah, yes. The ant is a centaur. The ant is a centaur in his dragon world. Ezra Pound. Pound Day. All right, we're out of here. Thanks for being here. I just have to say one more thing about that video. Listen to that language. Listen to that language. Listen to that delivery. That was not everybody wrote like that or talked like that, but more people did than not during that time. And we have fallen so far from that form of oratory and that form of imagery. And what has it been replaced with? It's been replaced with hip hop and rap. And it is such a it's like a fifth, sixth rate copy, right? Like for a while, people were they were supplicated with Dylan or Cohen or Paul Simon. But what about now? Nobody writes like that or talks like that now. I think we're a degraded copy of a former time. But don't let it define your reality. Strive for the classical approach as the day awaits you and greets you like a fuming dragon on the horizon. A dragon you can either slay or ride. Ride the dragon of the day. There you go. Treat each other well. You use your head in order to serve material. Your heart to set what's possible. I'm Robert Phoenix. God bless. I got to go program the other show. Bye for now.